Adventurous kids, explore with education and learning what a wild life is in the Everglades. I want to explore the Museum of Discovering Science. What plants do butterflies like? I want to know about Key West Adventurous Kids, learning and fun. Adventurous Kids!
Today I'm going to tell you about Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks is an incredibly important person in the history of civil rights and racial equality. She helped start the civil rights movement in the United States of America. Rosa grew up in the southern United States in Alabama. Her full name was Rosa Willis Macaulay, and she was born in Tuskegee, Alabama on February 4th, 1913, to Leona and James Macaulay. Her mother was a teacher, and her father was a carpenter. She had a younger brother named Sylvester. Her parents separated while she was still young, and she, with her mother and brother, went to live on her grandparents' farm in the nearby town of Pine Level. One of the most important lessons Rosa learned from her grandparents was about how to respect herself even when others didn't. Rosa went to the local school for African American children, where her mother was a teacher. Rosa's mother wanted her to get a high school education, but this wasn't easy for an African American girl living in Alabama in the 1920s. After finishing up elementary school at Pine Level, she attended the Montgomery Industrial School for Girls. Then she attended Alabama State Teachers College in order to try to get her high school diploma. Unfortunately, Rosa's education was cut short when her mother became very ill. Rosa left school to care for her mother. A few years later, Rosa met Raymond Parks. Raymond was a successful barber who worked in Montgomery. They married a year later in 1932. Rosa worked part-time jobs and went back to school, finally earning her high school diploma at the age of 20, something she was very proud of. During this time, the city of Montgomery was segregated. This meant that things were different for white people and black people. They had different schools, different churches, different stores, different elevators, and even different drinking fountains. Places often had signs saying for color only and for whites only. When Rosa would ride the bus to work, she would have to sit in the back in the seats marked for colored. Sometimes she would have to stand, even if there were seats open up front. In the face of such racism, Rosa decided to make a stand for what was right. Together with her husband Raymond, she joined the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, working towards putting an end to discrimination and segregation. But it was on the December 1, 1955 that Rosa truly sparked change. Rosa had settled in her seat on the bus after a hard day's work, but all the seats on the bus had filled up when a white man boarded. The bus driver told Rosa and some other African Americans to stand up. Rosa refused. The bus driver said he would call the police. Rosa didn't move. Soon the police showed up and Rosa was arrested. Rosa was charged with breaking a segregation law and was told to pay a fine of $10. She refused to pay, however, saying that she was not guilty and that the law was illegal. She appealed to a higher court. That night, a number of African American leaders got together and decided to boycott the city buses. This meant that African Americans would no longer ride the buses. One of these leaders was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He became the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association, which helped to lead the boycott. For 381 days from December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956, thousands of blacks refused to ride the buses in Montgomery. The protest proved super effective, with more black people participating than had been expected. And since African Americans made up around 70% of bus users, the city's transport services made far less money and began to struggle. But it wasn't an easy protest for the black citizens. Many of them didn't own cars, and so they had to carpool together or walk long distances to get where they needed to go. Finally, The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that desegregation laws in Alabama were unconstitutional. Parks was fired from her job and threatened by white people. She and her family moved to Detroit, Michigan in 1957 to live with Rosa's brother. There, she continued to promote civil rights and help those suffering from discrimination and injustice. She then worked in the office of U.S. Representative John Conyers Jr. Rosa received numerous awards for her strength, courage, and her incredible work for civil rights, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1996 and the Congressional Gold Medal in 1999. Rosa Parks wrote an autobiography called Rosa Parks: My Story, which was published in 1992. This book was a detailed account of her life and the events that led to her arrest in 1955 when she refused to give up her bus seat to a white passenger. Rosa Parks died in Detroit on October 24, 2005 at the age of 92. Legislation was enacted later that year to add a likeness to Parks to Statuary Hall in the U.S. Capitol. The statue features the civil rights leader in a seated position and is the first full-size statue of a woman to be placed in the Capitol. It is a reminder of her legacy and her incredible courage that inspired the civil rights movement. In downtown Montgomery, Alabama, a sign marks the place where Rosa Parks waited for the bus in 1955. You can visit the actual bus that Rosa Parks sat in at the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan. In 2013, a postage stamp with Rosa's pictures released on February 4th on her 100th birthday. Rosa Parks continues to be recognized all over the world as a symbol of freedom and equality. Thank you for watching this episode of Adventurous Kids.
What did you learn today?
Adventurous Kids!
Adventurous Kids!
What was the most interesting fact?
Adventurous Kids!
Adventurous Kids!
Adventurous